Has time run out for New York Giants head coach Brian Daboll and general manager Joe Schoen? We'll talk about that and more coming your way next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all my written work. And as always, welcome on in to my Blue Crew community members, to my everydayers, to my newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we made it. The season is over. The horrible record-setting for the wrong reason 2024 New York Giants season is over. The Giants finishing with 3-14, their first 14-game loss since the 17-game schedule was implemented. So that means that this is the most number of losses that they have had in their 100-year history. The Giants also going winless against the NFC East opponents for the very first time. It's a very special team to do that, doesn't it? So anyway, that season is in the books. But what I'm not going to do today, I'm not going to spend time talking about the Giants' regular season finale loss to the Philadelphia Eagles, which now means 11 straight games that the Giants have lost in games against the Eagles played at Lincoln Financial Field. What I want to talk about today is, where do the Giants go from here? Has time run out on Giants general manager Joe Schoen, head coach Brian Daboll? What's the status there? What's the timing we're looking at? We'll take a look at some of objectively, we'll take a look at some of the problems and if these are the right people to fix these problems. And then I'm going to tell you what I think the outcome is. Now, again, it's what I think the outcome is, not what I want. I keep what I want out of these shows wherever possible. And if I do mention what I want, I tell you it's what I want. So anyway, that's today's show. Again, welcome on into everybody. Let's get started. All right. So Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll, they are not a package deal. Each man is set to meet with ownership separately. The meetings, as I understand it, they've actually already begun, but these are the types of discussions that just you don't get done in one sitting. So there have been multiple sittings. There will continue to be discussions moving forward. I don't think Daboll or Schoen will admit to it or ownership will admit to it, but there'll probably be one session where the two of them are brought together and they'll just to make sure everybody's on the same page. But the New York Post had reported on Sunday morning that a decision might not necessarily come on Monday, that it could drag out into Tuesday or maybe even later in the week. I don't know that is going to be the case. I'd be surprised if it drags out because I would think you would want to, make a decision quickly enough. There has been plenty of time and plenty of evidence to figure out what you are going to do, to look at what you have seen and to maybe make a determination how much of it was a direct result of something Daboll and or Schoen did do versus what they did not do. So, there's going to be those discussions. Daboll, as usual, after the game, wasn't very forthcoming as when asked about his future. Just, those discussions will come. I'll keep my conversations with ownership private. The usual. I mean, gosh, one of these days, maybe he'll share something. I don't know. I won't hold my breath if he's back. But anyway, where does that leave everything right now? Well, Jay Glazer of Fox Sports, Adam Schefter of ESPN, they basically were of the opinion that Daboll and Schoen will return. Jordan Schultz, who is a Fox Sports insider, reported that John Mara had actually reached out and to who I'm not sure, but trying to get a feel of, okay, if I split these guys up, does it make sense? So John Mara, it sounds like, still wasn't certain which way to go. Now we know that John Mara has said in the past that he doesn't want to have to make a change if he doesn't need to. That he's tired of swapping out the head coach after every couple of years. We know that ownership doesn't really want to have to keep paying coaches or keeping them on the payroll, I should say, even though they're not in the building. So these are just some of the factors regarding the decision that's going to need to be made. But, there's going to be other factors that go into this. I mentioned, okay, how much of what happened this season and the season before, we've got to go back to the season before, how much of that was Shane's doing, Daboll's doing? Is it something that, you could sit down and say, okay, look, guys, you've tried doing it this way for the last couple of years. It hasn't worked. Now you've got to do it the way we tell you to do. And if ownership starts, making those types of demands, will Shane and or Daboll say, okay, if that's what you want, that's what we'll do? Will they dig in and say, but we believe in our processes and we have shown that these processes can work? That's where it gets a little sticky. How stubborn will each guy be? I think Shane will be a little bit more receptive to suggestions that might come down from ownership. I think Daboll will be too, except if it comes down to things like play calling or anything, having to do with player development, which of course are two very big issues with this team. So that being said, we may find out on Monday if they are back. I will be up bright and early, obviously, keeping an eye on that. I'll try and stay up as late as I can in case something breaks on Sunday night when I'm taping this show. But my guess is we may not hear anything right away. I hope we do because I'd like to, get the analysis out of the way and just move forward and get into the off-season content. But while many of you probably say, well, it's an easy decision. It should be a no-brainer. They should both get fired, or Daboll should be fired and Shane should be retained. It's maybe not that easy if you're looking at it from the Giants' perspective. And the reason for that is because I go back to last week, the win over the Colts, and how everything functioned the way, at least on the football field, the way that it was supposed to be, the way you draw it up in the preseason. So, did that save Brian Daboll? Was Brian Daboll ever really in jeopardy? I do believe he was in jeopardy. I've said all along that I felt that he was more in jeopardy than Joe Schoen, but did last week save him? I think it's possible. I really do. And I know that's not something that a lot of you want to hear. I'm just being, honest with you. And that is, taking a look at what actually went wrong with this team and, what needs to be fixed. And there's a lot that needs to be fixed. And you know what, folks, we're going to talk about some of that stuff in the next segment because I'm going to go down the problems. And if I were ownership, what would I want to know from Shane and Daboll as far as what they intend to do about some of these issues that have popped up now? Some of this stuff might not be touched upon. Some of it might. I might be missing stuff, but I'm going to go over all this with you right after this. Hey, Giant fans, when you are hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. They help you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but who might be open for the perfect role. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours when they use LinkedIn. And did you know that LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier? They have a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process easier and quicker. Find out why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring by posting your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Hey, Giant fans, Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. It brings you everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium subscription services. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services that I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. So go on, cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked on today. Again, that's rocketmoney.com/locked on. rocketmoney.com/locked on. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and coming up this week, obviously, if we get word that, regarding Schoen and Daboll, I will have a show for you on that just as soon as I humanly can. Any other breaking news, obviously, we'll talk about on the next show. This week, we're also going to talk about the Giants' draft position. The Giants will be drafting third in the order. So I have some thoughts about that I want to spend the show talking about. And then we'll just keep on rolling. I think at some point, Ed Valentine will be back on with me as we kind of, recap and, debrief on what's gone on the last few days, or what will go on the next few days, I should say. So we got a lot coming up here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And I hope, of course, you will tune in and check it all out. All right. Let's get back to the topic at hand. Has time run out for Schoen and Daboll? Well, let's take a look at some of the problems with the team. And we're going to take an objective look, okay? Now, obviously, the number one issue that you can look at and point to is the quarterback situation. Now, I'm not going to sit here and blame it on Daniel Jones. I don't want to keep beating that dead horse. But what I will say is this. You go back to last offseason. The Giants on Hard Knocks made it perfectly clear that they wanted to move on from Daniel Jones, that they were willing to trade up to get a quarterback in last year's draft, and they were not able to do so. New England wasn't willing to trade. Arizona wasn't willing to trade, and they couldn't get one of, Jaden Daniels or Drake May. So they had to run it back with Daniel Jones. And they told everybody, okay, we have confidence in Daniel Jones. We'll get him a receiver and we'll just hope, we'll keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. Well, it didn't work out. Not totally Daniel Jones's fault. So, if I'm ownership, I say to Brian Daboll, hey, listen, dude, you came in here with a reputation as being a quarterback whisperer. Why is it that you could not get Daniel Jones to look like he did in 2022? Why did his confidence start to slip? Why did his play start to slip? Now, my theory on that, in part, I always suspected that the relationship between the two deteriorated for some reason, whether it be because Daniel made wrong decisions or whatever. I go back to 2023. I don't know if you guys remember, but that time when Daboll was caught on the sidelines and he kind of chucked the tablet after going over an interception that Daniel Jones had thrown in a game against Seattle. That to me kind of was like a symbol that maybe there was a little frustration going on. I go back and I look at, all the times that when Daboll was asked about Daniel Jones, he said the right things, but you could tell he was kind of, going through the motions. So I always wondered if Jones was the guy that Daboll felt that he could win with, or was it he just the guy that he had to work with because of the circumstances? So, now some of you will say, well, Joe Schoen signed him. And as I've explained before, Joe had to do that. All right, which is why he put the escape hatch in the contract. They were coming off the playoff season win. Um, they had to do it. Saquon wouldn't play ball with them, but originally what they had wanted to do is sign Saquon and have the franchise tag available for Daniel. It didn't work out that way because Saquon basically wouldn't play ball. So Joe put the escape hatch in there, and they have used the escape hatch. All right, so again, if I'm ownership, why didn't the quarterback situation work out? And how can you assure me that if we go and we draft another quarterback, that we won't have a repeat of what happened with Daniel Jones? So Daboll's got to come up with an answer on that. The drafting aspect of it, all right, with Joe Schoen. This year's draft class, this 2024 class of the Giants, looks like it's a home run. I don't think a lot of people, if any, have any problems with it. But look at the last, the 3 years, the entire body of work. You've got, especially the first 3 rounds, all right? So the first draft, Kayvon Thibodeau, Evan Neal, who right now is bordering on bust. Joshua Zuda was in that class. I mean, nothing, maybe you'll get something out of Thibodeau. I mean, he shows the most promise, but you got to do better with your first 3 picks, okay? Then 2023, Deonte Banks, he kind of went backwards. I forgot to mention Wan'Dale Robinson in 2022. He looks like a keeper, but is he a limited player for what they want to do in the offense? So you just keep looking at, the top 3. And I think we could all agree that the draft, while again, this year's draft class much, much better and probably the best out of the 3, you got to do better. So the player evaluation, how can you improve that? And with that, folks, the ability to assess value to the players in the locker room, all right? I've said this before, and this is something I'll scream about until I'm blue in the face. You had a chance to trade Azeez Ojulari. You wanted a 4th. Nobody was willing to offer it to you. You could have had a 5th, which for a team that needs as many draft picks as possible to fix some of these holes, why didn't you take that? Now you run the risk of, you might lose this guy and you might not get anything in return. So that's a problem. Along those lines with Joe Schoen, what is your plan for fixing this roster? So you've got free agency. The Giants are going to have over $50 million in money. You've got obviously the draft. How are you going to fix it? Are you going to use free agency to address maybe the quarterback situation? Are you going to use free agency to get your bridge quarterback? Is that bridge quarterback going to be your guy because you don't like what's in the draft? What exactly are you going to do? So these are questions that Schoen needs to have an answer for. Thus far, I'm not sure if they have the answer. I guess they're still kind of exploring that, but he better have some kind of answer based on the work that's been done so far. We could take a look at the defense, going back to Brian Daboll. Is Shane Bowen a fit for what this defense, the defensive personnel? Can you say that, Deonte Banks struggled because Shane Bowen asked him to play more zone coverage? You could. Could you say that his system wasn't a fit and that's why Bobby Okereke didn't have the season that he had the year prior? You can make that argument. So these are questions that, you want Daboll to answer about his coaching staff. How are you going to fix that? What are you going to do about play calling? Are you going to keep the play calling, or are you going to hire another offensive coordinator if Mike Kafka leaves? Or are you going to, just give it back to Mike Kafka? Because Brian, you took over the play calling this year, and I'm sorry, it just didn't look good. All right. Now, if you're Brian Daboll, your counter argument is, well, you know what? I didn't have a great quarterback play all season long, but you saw what I did against the Indianapolis Colts. Well, not to diss the Indianapolis Colts, but they didn't play very well in that game. So can you, if you are Brian Daboll, hang your hat on that and say, well, look at what happens if I have competent play and I can call the play, keep calling the plays. Look at what I can do. So that to me, I think is going to be a sticking point here because, if your ownership and you want Dable to give up the play calling, will he do it? I have the feeling he's not going to want to do it. And if he does do it, he's going to do so reluctantly. And then here's a really big one, folks. The Giants have been outscored over the last 3 years. They have been outscored 254 to 100 in the first quarter of games. That is the worst out of all the teams over that 3-year period, which means that this team is not getting off to fast starts. So what can you, Brian, as the coach, do to ensure that we're not playing from behind every stinking week, right? Because that is a problem. So these are some of the questions that I think ownership are going to want to identify as problems with this current regime. And they're going to want answers for. And there's going to be others. You could talk about the injuries, obviously, which, I get it. Injuries happen. Nobody has any control of it. But my gosh, how many injuries did we hear of this year that took place in practice? Way too many, in my opinion. Okay, I could see if they happen in the game, but in practice on the grass field, you get guys, breaking their leg or pulling a muscle or whatever, or pulling a groin. Come on, what's going on here? What exactly is going on and how are you going to fix it? I talk about training camp and how Brian Daboll doesn't like to, for whatever reason, play his guys in training in the preseason. If there's, that week there had been a joint practice, that's got to change. So, look, Brian Daboll, when he spoke to the media after the Eagles game, he talked about, I believe in the people and I believe in the processes that we have in place. Well, I'm sorry. The processes that you have in place have not worked successfully or consistently, I should say, the last couple of years. Something's got to change, right? You can believe in the people all you want. That's fine. But your processes need to change. I mean, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And if I'm ownership and I'm sitting down and I want to know, okay, what exactly are the issues here and how are we going to fix them? That's something I'm going to want to know as well. All right, coming up next. So what's going to be the outcome of all this? Again, are we going to find out on Monday morning? Are we going to find out Sunday night? When are we going to hear? I'm going to tell you what I think the outcome is and why, so don't go anywhere. Hey, Giant fans, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the very same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And, has time run out for Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen? What do I think is going to happen? Folks, I've been saying it all along, and I'm going to say it again. Nothing has really changed my mind here. I think both guys are going to be back. I really do. Shane was basically talking about being back at the bye week. And I know a lot has happened since then, but for the Giants ownership to rip everything down, I just don't think they're going to do it. I think, the big argument that is going to be made is going to be, look, if we fix the quarterback play, if we fill in some of the holes that we have, we can get this back on track, but we've got to fix the quarterback. That's got to be priority A, B, C, and D. So I do think the Giants are going to stay with the current program. And here's the other reason why I think they're going to stay with Shane and Daboll. If you fire Daboll and keep Shane, what kind of a challenge are you going to have recruiting a top potential head coach candidate? All right. Because that head coach candidate could say, well, why would I want to go there if Shane's on shaky ground? Where maybe there's a possibility he gets fired. And if he gets fired, who am I going to end up working with? I just think if you're going to keep both of them, you keep both of them. If you're going to fire them, fire both of them. Don't split them up. And I think, I've said all along that I believe Shane is going to stay. And by, extension, I think now Daboll will stay. Right? Now, do I agree with it? For one, I can make an argument for it. I can make an argument against it. I would like to see things done differently. I've outlined different things that I'd want to see. Do I agree with keeping Shane? Yeah, I can agree with it. I could find reason to say yes. Do I agree with keeping Daboll? I would say yes. I would say yes. I think, all things considered, he's never lost the locker room. Okay. Those guys have played hard for him. I believe from talking to guys both on and off the record that they legitimately like him, that they appreciate that how he protects them in the media. He doesn't throw anybody under the bus. So I do think there's an appreciation there. And here's the other thing, folks. This isn't a case like, with Ben McAdoo, when Ben McAdoo totally lost the locker room and had to go. This isn't a case where Joe Judge basically opened his mouth and got himself fired, okay? For those who don't know, John Mara was willing to keep Joe Judge. Even though Dave Gettleman was retiring, okay? But Joe Judge went off on that tangent, and one thing led to another. Daboll hasn't done that, okay? So I do think both of them will probably stay. I'm willing to give them both the benefit of the doubt. And look, I get it. Some of you are sitting there and you're saying, I can't go through this again. If they stay, I'm not going to follow, et cetera, et cetera. But you know what? Maybe the infusion of a new quarterback, maybe the infusion of some new talent, maybe some tweaks to the coaching staff, that could rejuvenate this program. And I get it. Look, it's the month of January. Maybes don't fly in January. I get it. But we're coming off of a long, grueling, and emotional and disappointing season. I'd like to think, and maybe this is me being naive. Maybe this is just me being optimistic, because I do try to be optimistic. I try to see, the positives. I don't want to be a negative Nelly all the time, but I do think that they can turn this around. I hope they can. But I will say this, folks, come next year, or actually as the offseason unfolds, I'm going to keep a very close eye on the decisions that are made. All right. I already have some thoughts about what they need to do. And, if they're not done, I'm going to talk about them. And I'm going to give you my honest 2 cents. All right. Because you guys deserve it. So we'll find out. All right. Whether it's, again, Monday or Tuesday, whenever it is, I'll have that for you. I'll break down the decisions. I'll tell you what was said. I'll give you all that stuff. We'll try and get that out to you as quickly as we possibly can. So please plan to keep it here on the Locked On Giants podcast all week long. As always, Giant fans, I want to thank you for tuning in, spending part of your day with us here. It is appreciated, and I will see you tomorrow.